Captain Elias Arden adjusted the straps of his utility harness as he stepped off the shuttle onto the rocky surface of Narathis Station. The wind howled through the colony's outer dome, carrying fine red dust from the barren surface below. He paused for a moment, taking in the sight of the human settlement, perched precariously along the jagged cliffs. The colony was small, but it hummed with life. Clusters of domes, interconnected walkways, and the faint glow of energy panels along the cliff edges. Yet, despite the visible signs of activity, there was an unusual stillness. Colonists hurried past him, heads down, avoiding his eyes. Children clutched the hands of their parents, and even the guards seemed tense. Whispers followed him wherever he went. Elias had been on many colonies, but he had never felt the weight of fear so thick. "Captain Arden!" called a young officer running up the walkway. Her face was pale, eyes wide. "The Council. They want to brief you immediately. It's about Zyra." Elias nodded, adjusting the communicator on his wrist. Zyra. The name had traveled across human space like a rumor, whispered in fear and awe. Some called her a threat. Others said she was a goddess of destruction. He didn't know what to expect. All he knew was that this colony had been living under the shadow of fear for too long, and he had been sent to understand it. The council chamber was located at the highest dome in the settlement. As he entered, he immediately noticed the atmosphere, heavy, tense, and wary. Around the semicircular table sat the colony leaders, their faces drawn and anxious. Screens behind them displayed security footage of the colony, highlighting areas that had been marked as high-risk zones. "Captain Arden," said Governor Merrick, his voice low and shaky. "Thank you for coming. We trust you understand the gravity of the situation." "I understand," Elias replied calmly. "I just need to meet her, to see for myself what kind of threat we're dealing with." Merrick's eyes flickered nervously. She has appeared in restricted sectors before. Equipment malfunctions, unexplained energy surges. We believe she can manipulate the systems. Even the drones won't go near her. Elias raised an eyebrow. Manipulate the systems? Or the humans who built them? The governor fidgeted, but said nothing. Elias turned toward the officer at the doorway. "Lead me to her." The corridor leading to the observation deck was dimly lit, reinforced with energy shielding. Elias could feel the tension in the air, the same fear that had clung to every colonist he had seen so far. A flicker of movement caught his eye. He paused, squinting. There, at the far end of the deck, stood Zyra. She was taller than he expected, her figure graceful, almost ethereal. Her skin glowed faintly blue, a soft luminescence that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her calm movements. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and alien. Large, dark, and reflective, as though they could see past the surface of reality itself. The colonists behind the observation window shrank back, whispering in terror. But Elias did not move away. He felt an odd sense of calm, a strange certainty that this being was not the monster the colony feared. Zyra tilted her head slightly, observing him. She did not speak, at least not in words. Yet there was an awareness there, an intelligence, that seemed to study him as carefully as he studied her. Elias chuckled softly, a low, unexpected laugh. The sound echoed across the chamber. The colonists froze. The governor's jaw tightened. Zyra's eyes widened ever so slightly, and for a moment the fear in the room seemed suspended.
"You're laughing?" Merrick said, incredulous.
"Yes," Elias replied, smiling faintly. "It's a little funny, isn't it? All this fear for a being who hasn't harmed anyone yet." The words hung in the air. Zyra's gaze remained fixed on him, curious, almost amused. She stepped closer, moving past the protective energy field that separated her from the humans. Her movements were slow and deliberate, fluid, as if gliding on the air itself. The colonists pressed back against the walls, some covering their mouths, unsure whether to scream or faint. Elias stayed still, watching her. "I'm not afraid," he said simply. "I want to understand you. That's why I'm here." For a long moment, she did not respond. Then, without warning, she extended one hand toward a console, causing a stream of holographic lights to ripple across the room. Machines that had been malfunctioning suddenly stabilized. The lights blinked in patterns that no human engineer could have predicted. The alarms in the room ceased, and the air seemed lighter. Elias's laugh grew louder, a sound of disbelief and awe mixed together. "See?" he said. "You're helping, not harming." The colonists watched in shock. Some began whispering. Tentative. Cautious. Maybe she's not what we thought. Zyra's eyes flicked to him again, and this time there was a subtle acknowledgement. A faint gesture, a tilt of her head. She was curious about him, intrigued by his lack of fear, by the laughter that seemed to disrupt the tension around her. Elias approached slowly, keeping his hands visible. He stopped a few meters away, close enough to study her, yet respectful of the space she seemed to command. "I don't know why people are scared of you," he said softly. "Perhaps they only fear what they don't understand." For the first time, a faint smile touched her features, barely perceptible but undeniable. The room seemed to shift subtly, the oppressive tension dissolving a little. Elias turned to the observation window where colonists huddled, wide-eyed. "Look at her," he said. "She's not a monster. She's just different." Some of the colonists lowered their gaze, uncertain, struggling to reconcile what they had been taught with what they were witnessing. Others whispered, cautious but curious. The fear that had gripped the colony for months began to fracture. The governor cleared his throat, his voice trembling. "Captain Arden, you understand the risks. She is still unknown. We cannot take chances." Elias nodded. "I understand, but fear alone cannot guide us." "I need to see more. I need to know her intent." Zyra stepped back slightly, observing him, studying him, with eyes that seemed to penetrate deeper than the human mind would allow. She moved with precision, her presence commanding, yet strangely reassuring. Elias laughed again, shaking his head at the absurdity of the situation. Humans terrified of a being who had done nothing but show curiosity and intelligence. "That laughter," whispered a young colonist, clutching her father's hand. He's not afraid." "No," Elias said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "Fear is only part of the story. Understanding, that's the path forward." The alien being Zyra watched him closely, the tension between them charged but not hostile. The room, still tense, seemed to pulse with possibility. For the first time in months, the colony felt the faint stirrings of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, the fear could be replaced by something better, something that could change the course of their future. Elias took a step closer. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "we begin to learn from each other, not as enemies, but as beings who share this space." Zyra tilted her head, the faintest flicker of light traveling across her skin. She did not speak, but Elias could feel it, a recognition, a willingness to begin. And as the sun set over the jagged cliffs of Nirathis, the first seed of trust was planted. The colonists had yet to see what this alliance could mean, but the laughter of a human man had cracked the wall of fear that had held them captive for too long. It was the beginning of something new, a fragile but powerful connection that could reshape the future of both species. The next morning, Captain Elias Arden woke to the soft hum of the colony's energy grid. The red dust of Nirathis Station glittered faintly in the light of the twin suns as he prepared for his first full day observing Zyra. The events of the previous evening, the laughter, the strange calm, the faint seed of trust, still lingered in his mind. He knew that understanding this alien being would take patience, courage, and a willingness to see beyond fear. He walked along the corridors of the colony, passing groups of colonists who glanced at him nervously. Some whispered among themselves, their voices low and tentative. "Did you see him yesterday?" one woman said, her hands trembling slightly. He laughed while she was right there. How could he not be afraid? A man beside her shook his head. Maybe he understands what we do not. Maybe fear is not the only answer. Elias reached the observation deck where Zyra had spent the night. She was there, standing silently by the window, watching the horizon. The soft glow of her blue skin reflected the sunlight, casting patterns on the polished floor. When she noticed him, she tilted her head slightly. The faint flicker of curiosity in her eyes seemed almost human. He approached carefully, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Good morning," he said softly. "I hope I didn't startle you." Zyra's gaze remained steady. She did not speak, but she extended her hand slightly toward a holographic console. As he watched, the system light stabilized, signaling that the energy grid was running smoothly after a minor fluctuation during the night. Elias nodded, impressed. The colony had depended on these systems for life support, water, and communication. Her subtle intervention had kept them safe. "You helped last night," he said. "The systems, they were failing." Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Elias thought he saw a hint of expression, a faint, almost imperceptible smile. She did not respond with words, but her gesture was enough. It was a recognition of the human understanding he offered, a silent acknowledgement that they were beginning to communicate, to understand each other. Elias spent the morning walking with her through the colony. He observed her closely as she moved. Her steps were precise, graceful, and unhurried. She paused at broken machinery, gently adjusting components, with movements that seemed both delicate and deliberate. Where humans had grown anxious or cautious, she operated with confidence and calm, as though she understood the systems on a level no human engineer could reach. Colonists watched from windows and doorways. Some still trembled, but others whispered in fascination. "She's fixing things," one said. "She's not harming us." Elias smiled faintly at the murmurs. "Exactly," he said quietly. "Fear clouds judgment. Seeing the truth, it takes courage." By midday, a critical situation arose. A storage pod in the lower biodome had begun leaking nitrogen, threatening the delicate plant life inside. Alarms blared, and automated systems attempted to contain the leak but failed repeatedly. Panic spread among the workers, who backed away from the pod, unsure how to respond. Elias acted immediately. "Stay calm," he called, his voice carrying over the alarm. He sprinted toward the pod, dodging falling tools and startled colonists. Zyra followed silently, her movements fluid, almost blending with the light of the dome. Together, they worked. Elias directed the human workers, using simple commands to stabilize the emergency valves, while Zyra manipulated the energy field around the pod with gestures that seemed impossibly precise. Slowly, the nitrogen leak was contained. The alarms ceased, and the dome returned to normal. Elias laughed softly, shaking his head.
"See? Chaos solved with calm logic and teamwork."
Colonists watched in awe. Their fear faltered, replaced by fascination and something else. Hope. For the first time, they began to see Zyra not as a monster, but as a being capable of great understanding and skill. As the day progressed, Elias continued his observations. He noticed how Zyra reacted to human behavior, a gentle adjustment when a child tripped, a soft shimmer of energy to stabilize a loose scaffold, a pause to observe a bird nesting in one of the biodomes. She did not speak, yet her actions communicated volumes. She valued life, balance, and the well-being of those around her. During a break, Elias approached her as she stood overlooking the cliffside. The wind carried the faint scent of the planet's minerals, and the twin suns cast long shadows across the colony. "You do more than they expect," he said quietly. "Humans fear what they do not understand. They cannot see your intentions." Her gaze met his. There was no hostility, no malice, only a quiet intelligence, a willingness to be seen as she was. Elias felt a strange sense of connection. For a being so different, she understood more than he expected. That evening, the colony's council summoned him for an urgent meeting. The council chambers were tense, the leaders' faces drawn with worry. "Captain Arden," Governor Merrick said, "we've received reports of strange behavior. Some systems are functioning differently after Zyra's interactions. Colonists are uneasy. They do not understand." Elias nodded. "I understand their concern. But what I've observed is not dangerous. In fact, it is protective. She stabilizes the systems. She cares for the colony. And she responds to calm behavior, not fear." A council member, voice trembling, asked, "But she is different. We cannot ignore the risk. How do we know she will not turn against us?" Elias leaned forward, his eyes steady. "We cannot know for certain, but if we approach with fear, we invite conflict. If we approach with understanding, we invite cooperation." Yesterday, I laughed. I acknowledged the absurdity of fear without knowledge. Today, she helped save the biodome. Tomorrow, who knows what we could achieve together. The council remained silent, some exchanging uncertain glances. Elias left the chamber with a mixture of relief and determination. Change would not come easily, but small steps, courage, observation, and understanding could break the chains of fear that had held the colony captive. Back at the observation deck, Zyra awaited. She did not speak, but the slight flicker of light across her skin signaled recognition. Elias smiled. "Tomorrow, we continue. We learn. We grow." She inclined her head, and for a moment, the world seemed quiet. The wind, the hum of the colony, and the distant calls of alien birds all faded into a single awareness. Two beings, so different, yet connected by choice and curiosity. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Elias reflected on the day. Fear had ruled this colony for months, but cracks were appearing. Laughter, calm action, and mutual respect were beginning to bridge the gap between human and alien. It was fragile, yes, but it was a start. He turned to look at Zyra. "You may not speak in our language," he said softly, "but we understand each other in ways words cannot capture, and perhaps that is how trust begins." She tilted her head slightly, as though acknowledging the truth of his words. Elias felt a quiet hope settle over him. This was only the beginning. The colony would learn, slowly, to see her as he did, not as a monster, but as a being whose actions reflected intelligence, care, and understanding. That night, as the colony settled into uneasy rest, Elias remained on the observation deck, watching Zyra move through the lights of the settlement. Each gesture, each careful step, each interaction with the environment and the colonists was a lesson, a demonstration of what could be achieved when fear was replaced by courage and curiosity. And Elias knew, as he watched the alien figure in the dim light, that the journey ahead would test every part of the human spirit: fear, courage, empathy, and trust. But the first steps had already been taken. The laughter that had broken the initial fear was only the beginning of a larger story, one that could change the fate of the colony and perhaps even humanity itself. The colony had begun to stir with cautious curiosity. The events of the previous days, the laughter, the saved biodome, and the subtle acts of care from Zyra had begun to crack the wall of fear that had held the colonists in thrall. Yet fear did not disappear quickly, and some of the older council members still whispered behind closed doors, worried about the unknown power of the alien figure who had entered their lives. Captain Elias Arden moved through the colony with purpose, aware that every step he took could influence how humans and Zyra interacted. He observed her from a distance, Noting how she approached each task with careful precision, she adjusted energy fields to stabilize fragile systems, calmed animals that had grown agitated from the planetary winds, and guided machinery with gestures that seemed impossible for anyone not attuned to the energy that flowed through the colony. Elias knew the colonists were watching him, gauging his reactions. If he faltered or showed fear, it would reinforce their own. He made sure to remain calm, even cheerful, walking with a confidence he did not always feel, but knew he had to project. He had seen the power of his laughter. It had been a strange, simple thing, yet it had shifted perspectives. Today, he intended to build on that trust. The day began with a routine check of the lower sectors of the colony. Elias and Zyra moved together, a silent team. Elias called the humans forward when their help was needed, while Zyra guided them with gestures and subtle energy manipulations that stabilized the environment. Children peeked from behind walls, parents unsure whether to let them watch. Every task completed without incident reinforced the slowly growing impression. Zyra was not a threat, and she was helpful. She was necessary. In the afternoon, a disturbance arose in the communication array. A solar flare had caused a cascading failure in the satellite uplinks, threatening to cut off the colony's connection to the nearby human research stations. Panic spread among the technicians, who scrambled to reroute energy and repair damaged circuits. Elias stepped forward, his calm voice carrying over the alarm. "Stay focused. Follow the procedures. Do not panic." Zyra joined him, her hands weaving patterns in the air that seemed to redirect energy flows with elegant precision. Machines that had been malfunctioning immediately stabilized. The technicians watched in awe as complex systems realigned under her guidance, functioning as if she were part of the machinery itself. One technician, a young woman named Lyra, whispered to her colleague, She saved it. She's not just helping. She's fixing it faster than any of us could." Elias nodded to Lyra. "See? Understanding and calm can achieve more than fear ever could." The colony began to notice more subtle signs of change. Guards who had once held weapons tightly now lowered them when Zyra passed. Colonists who had hidden behind walls now stepped into view, observing her with fascination instead of terror. The shift was gradual, almost imperceptible, but it was happening. By evening, the council demanded another meeting. They were concerned not only about Zyra, but also about Elias. He had begun to influence the colonists, showing them that fear was not the only response. Some council members feared that their control over the settlement was weakening. "Captain Arden," Governor Marek said, his voice tense, "your methods are unconventional. You encourage familiarity with Zyra. Some members of the council feel this may compromise security. She is unpredictable. She is not human. We do not know her limits." Elias met the governor's gaze steadily. "I understand your concern, but what I have observed is consistent. She stabilizes systems, she protects the colony, and she responds to calm and reasoned action. Fear alone does not ensure safety. It invites chaos."
A council member interjected, voice trembling.
"And if she turns against us, if her intentions change, we cannot ignore that possibility." Elias exhaled slowly.
Anything can happen, but every choice we make in fear strengthens that fear.
Every choice we make in understanding builds trust. Yesterday, she saved the biodome. Today, she stabilized the communication array. Tomorrow, she may prevent a disaster we cannot even foresee. Do we want to rely solely on fear, or do we want to learn, to grow? The council fell silent. Some were clearly uneasy with the argument, but a few younger members nodded subtly. Change would not be immediate, but the conversation had shifted. After the meeting, Elias returned to the observation deck. Zyra waited, her posture calm, her gaze fixed on the horizon. He approached her, careful not to break the delicate rhythm of trust they had established. "You handled the communication array beautifully," he said softly. The colony is watching. They are learning from you and from me." She tilted her head slightly, her eyes reflecting the light of the twin suns. There was no fear, no aggression, only awareness. Elias smiled, noting that even her subtle movements now seemed to communicate a form of understanding, a willingness to engage. As the day progressed into evening, a sudden alarm shattered the calm. A group of colonists had ventured into a restricted sector near the cliffs, ignoring warning signs. Automated defenses activated, sealing the area and triggering sirens. Panic rippled through the settlement. Elias didn't hesitate. He ran toward the sector, Zyra moving beside him. The colonists inside the area froze, unsure what to do as the alarms blared. He held up his hand, calling for calm. "Move slowly. Do not panic. We're here to help." Zyra extended her hands, directing a subtle energy field that stabilized falling structures and prevented machinery from harming the trespassers. Together, human and alien worked seamlessly, resolving the situation without injury or damage. From the observation deck, colonists and council members alike watched in stunned silence. Fear began to transform into admiration and awe. The same man who had laughed at fear now demonstrated courage and calm, and the alien who had once inspired terror now showed care, skill, and restraint. A young colonist whispered, I
never thought she could be like this,"
another replied, and he is not afraid. He trusts her. Elias looked at Zyra as they led the colonists back to safety. "See," he said quietly, "fear does not have to guide us. Understanding can achieve what fear never will." Zyra's gaze met his, and for a moment, Elias felt a profound connection. They were different in every way, yet in that shared purpose, they were equal. By nightfall, the colony had begun to settle, though unease still lingered in some hearts. Elias stood on the observation deck, watching Zyra move through the settlement. Each gesture, each interaction, each careful movement reinforced the lesson they were learning together. Trust and understanding could bridge the greatest gaps, even between species. He reflected on the day. Fear had dominated the colony for months, yet cracks were forming. His laughter had been a spark. Zyra's actions had been the fuel. Slowly, imperceptibly, the colony was beginning to see beyond fear. Elias knew the next days would be critical. The council still held power, and many colonists were cautious, still uncertain. But he also knew this: courage, empathy, and collaboration could transform not just perceptions, but realities. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Elias watched Zyra's glowing figure fade into the twilight. He felt hope stir, quiet but insistent. The laughter that had begun this transformation would not be enough on its own, but it had started a chain reaction. Trust, understanding, and cooperation would follow. He turned away from the window, ready to continue guiding the colony. The journey was far from over. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of courage and patience. Yet he felt certain that together, human and alien, they could face anything. And for the first time, the colony began to glimpse the possibility of a future, not ruled by fear, but by understanding, courage, and mutual respect. The following morning, the colony awoke to a sense of cautious optimism. Word of the previous day's events, the successful stabilization of the restricted sector and the safe return of the colonists, had spread quickly. People whispered in the corridors, eyes darting toward the observation deck where Captain Elias Arden and Zyra often moved together. There was still fear, yes, but it was tempered now with curiosity, and even a hint of admiration. Elias walked among the colonists as they went about their morning routines, greeting them with calm smiles and nods. He noticed how their demeanor had begun to shift. Workers who had once avoided the areas Zyra frequented now passed without hesitation, observing her as she went about her tasks. Guards lowered their weapons slightly, and even the council members appeared less rigid. though still cautious. He approached Zyra as she monitored the energy grids near the central dome. She was standing perfectly still, her luminous blue skin catching the early sunlight, and her dark, reflective eyes seemed to scan everything at once. Elias could see her awareness extending through the colony like a gentle current, subtle and precise. "You've done more than stabilize systems," he said softly. "You've changed how they see you, how they see me, how they see the world." Zyra tilted her head slightly, her gestures subtle but intentional. Elias understood her acknowledgement. She recognized the progress, just as he did. And together they had begun to reshape the colony's perception. Suddenly, a report came in through the central communications panel. A meteor shower was approaching the outer sectors. If even one large fragment hit the colony, it could destroy multiple domes and critical life support systems. Panic flared among the technicians, their fear palpable. Elias knew he had to act quickly to prevent chaos. "Follow me," he called, his voice steady. "Calm and organized. That is how we survive." Zyra followed, moving alongside him as they coordinated the evacuation of colonists from the outer sectors. She extended her hands, creating protective energy fields around fragile equipment and vulnerable workers. Her movements were precise, almost elegant, ensuring that no harm came to the humans or the structures they had built. Elias guided the colonists, giving clear instructions and reassuring them with his calm tone. The combination of human leadership and Zyra's alien skill proved remarkably effective. They diverted the majority of the colony's resources to reinforce vulnerable structures, while also protecting the colonists themselves. As the meteors entered the planet's atmosphere, a brilliant display of light streaked across the sky. Alarms sounded as fragments struck the outer perimeter. But the damage was minimal. Domes withstood the impact thanks to reinforced energy shields Zyra had activated. Colonists watched in awe, realizing for the first time that she was not an unpredictable threat, but a protector. One young engineer, trembling slightly, whispered to a friend, "She saved us. She really saved us." Elias smiled faintly, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. "Yes," he replied quietly. "But it is not just her. We acted together. Trust, courage, and cooperation. Those are what saved us today." By midday, the council called for an emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense, though no longer entirely fearful. Governor Merrick addressed Elias directly. "Captain Arden, your efforts have undoubtedly prevented disaster. Zyra's actions, they speak louder than any words I could have used to persuade the colonists. We owe her our gratitude." Elias nodded. "And we owe each other understanding. Fear alone cannot guide us. Today proves that courage and collaboration can." A younger council member spoke up, her voice steady. "I have seen it with my own eyes. The colony survives because humans and Zyra work together. Perhaps it is time to change our perspective entirely." The council murmured among themselves, some nodding, some still uncertain. Elias knew that the process would be gradual, but the seed had been planted. Trust, once a fragile concept, was now taking root. After the meeting, Elias returned to the observation deck. Zyra waited, standing quietly, as if aware that the world around them was shifting. Elias approached her and spoke softly. "You've done more than protect systems. You've changed hearts. The colony will remember this day." Her eyes met his, reflective and intelligent, acknowledging the truth of his words. Elias smiled. This is only the beginning. They will still have fears, still have doubts, but now they will also have understanding. Now they will have hope. Zyra's faint glow seemed to brighten slightly, an unspoken gesture of recognition. Elias realized that their partnership had achieved something remarkable, a bridge between human and alien, built not on domination or fear, but on respect. empathy, and courage. As the day ended, Elias led a group of colonists to the edge of the central dome to observe the twin suns setting over Nerothis. Zyra followed, silent but present, a figure of calm strength. The colonists watched, awe evident on their faces. Some whispered among themselves, tentative but inspired. One child tugged at her parent's sleeve. Is she... safe? The parent nodded slowly. Yes. And we are learning that fear is not the only way to see the world. Elias crouched to the child's level. Remember this, he said gently. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing to understand, even when you are afraid. The child nodded solemnly, eyes wide. Elias felt a quiet satisfaction. Lessons like these were as important as any technical system. They would shape the future of the colony far more profoundly than any shield or energy grid. As night fell, the colony was quiet, a peaceful hum resonating from the energy fields that Zyra had stabilized. Colonists moved carefully, but with less hesitation. Children played near safe zones, guards patrolled without tense rigidity, and the council members discussed plans with renewed confidence. Elias stood beside Zyra on the observation deck, looking out over the colony. We've begun something important here, he said. They feared you, they feared me, they feared what they did not understand. But now they are learning. Fear is losing its grip. She tilted her head, her eyes glowing softly. Elias smiled, knowing that the bond between them, fragile yet strong, had begun to transform not just the colony, but the way humans and aliens could coexist. The twin suns disappeared below the horizon, leaving a sky of soft twilight. Stars began to glimmer, reflecting in Zyra's eyes. Elias knew that the journey ahead would be long and challenges would remain. Fear and doubt could resurface, and the unknown would always pose threats. But for the first time, the colony had a future shaped not by fear, but by understanding, cooperation, and courage. Humanity's resilience, combined with Zyra's abilities and empathy, had created a new model, proof that beings of different worlds could find common ground, that respect and trust could bridge even the deepest divides. Elias let out a quiet laugh, soft but full of conviction. Zyra mirrored his calm presence, the alien figure standing in quiet acknowledgement of their shared victory. It was not just a day of survival. It was a day of transformation. The colony had survived meteors, fears, and uncertainty, but more importantly, it had begun to thrive under new guidance. People would remember the laughter of a human, the calm strength of an alien, and the lesson that courage and understanding could overcome even the most persistent fear. Elias looked at Zyra, feeling hope stronger than he had in years. We've only just begun, he said softly. Tomorrow, we continue, we grow, and together, we will face whatever comes next. She inclined her head, a silent acknowledgement of the future they would face together. The night wind carried the promise of new beginnings across the colony, and for the first time, humans and aliens alike looked at each other not with fear, but with the potential for partnership, trust, and friendship. The stars above Nerothis twinkled in quiet approval. The colony had entered a new era, and Captain Elias Arden, with his laughter and courage, had become the symbol of a humanity capable of embracing the unknown, not with terror, but with hope.